Hi again then guys, and welcome to another installment of Rivals, the versus top trump style match where we put two or more classic rivals against each other, vehicles which are well suited to go head to head, to find out in a top trumps on paper spec style matchup which one, on paper at least, in a fun kind of way, is the superior of the two. Now obviously different tracks, different drivers and different tuning will always have a real world bearing, so this should always be considered just for fun. This is not the be all and end all of which is the better car, it's purely for the fun of comparison. And in this particular matchup we've got two icons of Gran Turismo racing, the Corvette C5.R and the Team Oreca Viper GTS-R. So, enough chit-chat, let's get out to the track and actually compare the two. Now, first of all, we have the Corvette C5.R. This is a car which I've always loved, all the time that it's been on Gran Turismo. I think it's a fantastic looking machine, and although some people would have probably liked to see the C6 race car go up against the Viper, that's actually not a fair rivalry, because A, that car is not real, and B, it's not the same generation of vehicle. This Corvette is the direct rival of the Team Oreca Viper. So what do you get? Well, it's a Corvette, and the Corvette has a longer history than the Viper. It's more of a motorsport machine than the Viper in its numerous different racing forms. There have been far more Corvettes than there have been Vipers, and it is my personal favourite of the two. As far as handling, I would give the edge to the Corvette. The Viper is certainly not bad. Both are excellent, in fact, especially given the power that they have to deal with. But I would give the edge to the C5R. It's smoother, easier to drive, and I think a little bit more focused. As far as performance, the Viper is the quicker of the two, but even the Corvette can exceed 250 miles per hour pretty easily, which for the GT class is nothing to be sniffed at. You get all of that for a price of 1.45 million credits, and it can get around Laguna Seca in just over a minute and 15 seconds. So now let's see how the Viper compares. Now, as for the Viper, this particular model is available in two different forms on the game, but the only difference between the two is just the race number. That's it. Interestingly, it's the exact same price, 1.45 million credits, and the Viper of course is known in all of its forms for boasting big numbers. It's a huge engine vehicle, huge power, huge torque, and although it is heavier than the Corvette, it's still not a heavy vehicle overall, and given how much engine you are lugging around the track, it's actually pretty remarkable how well the Viper handles itself. It's a highly competitive machine which can most definitely give you victories in racing, and the top speed is the stronger of the two. In fact, the GTS-R is one of the quickest official GT machines in the game. It can do over 260 miles per hour under its own power, and although that's obviously not as quick as the road-going Vipers, for a GT car, that's very good. The acceleration is also strong, and although I gave the cornering edge to the Corvette, the Viper still handles itself far better than somebody who doesn't know better would probably assume. So that's overall for the initial feel. Now let's compare the raw spec to find out our winner. Now, just before we get into those specs to compare the two and find our victor, each week's Rivals matchup actually has some information in the video description which you may want to check out. In each video description is the exact lap times that each vehicle ran, but also, perhaps more importantly for some of you guys, are links to my personal reviews of a much more in-depth nature of each vehicle. So if you are interested in hearing a more long-form review, a more in-depth review of each particular vehicle each week, then be sure to check those out for that. But now let's get into the numbers. As you can see straight off the bat, the Viper does have the bigger numbers for the most part, and that's not necessarily always a good thing, because it's also bigger in terms of weight. It's a heavier car. Now, it's only by 11 kilos, but that's enough to give the Corvette a point. They also both cost exactly the same, which means I'm going to give them both a point in that regard. Apart from that though, it has to be said, it's a pretty clean sweep for the Viper. It has the larger engine, not surprisingly for a Viper, significantly more power, around 70 horsepower more, a lot more torque at 889 foot-pounds to the Corvette 760, slightly more weight, as we said. The horsepower per ton is higher at 917, and the PP on the Viper of 685 is one of the highest of any front-engine rear-wheel drive GT car in the game. The Corvette is certainly not a bad car in any particular way, but overall, this is pretty much our first runaway victory. There's usually only 1 or 2 points between the matchups, but on this occasion, the Viper really does run away with it, with 6 points to the Corvette's 2. Now, as I said, in the description below are the exact lap times, but overall, the Viper was 1.4 seconds quicker around 1 lap of Laguna Seca. You do have to, of course, remember that the Viper is also a significantly higher PP. So if you factor that in, 1.4 seconds isn't actually a huge amount. And although the Viper is certainly the stronger of the two on paper, I still personally prefer the C5R. But that's it overall for this particular versus match, and as I've alluded to before, this isn't set in stone. This is just a bit of fun, and this should not discourage you from buying the losing car or cars each week. Both cars are always strong, so give them both a chance. But that's it overall for this particular versus matchup, and as I've said before, if you have ideas for rivals matches which you would like to see, be sure to slap those down in the comments below, as many of you probably already have by now. And on a slight side note, if you have already suggested a versus match, you don't need to type it twice. If it's already in an existing video, I will be going back to those, so you don't need to repeat the same suggestion more than once. You're basically just wasting your own time doing that. If, however, you have a new idea, feel free to slap that down there as well. But overall, that's it for this particular versus match. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.